Hare Krishna. We welcome you all for our Thursday evening series, Wisdom of the Bhagavata. Today we are going to discuss about a very interesting topic, mysteries of the mind. Today we'll discuss what mind is, what the nature of the mind is, and most importantly, how to control the mind. Before we get started, let's follow the tradition of Bhakti Yoga practitioners, the tradition of offering words of gratitude to our spiritual masters, starting from Srila Prabhupada, Lord Chaitanya, and ultimately Lord Sri Radhakrishna. I'm going to recite a series of prayers for about 20 seconds. Please hear attentively. Simply by hearing, you will also take the exact same benefit as me doing the chanting. Please close your eyes and hear attentively. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivashadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you. Now let's get started. What is the mind? If you look at our body, there are 5 senses. We have the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the skin. These 5 are called as the gross senses in yoga texts. Now, interestingly, in addition to these 5 gross senses, the Bhakti Yoga texts also explain in detail about 3 subtle senses: the mind, intelligence, and false ego. So altogether, we have 8 senses, the 5 gross senses and the 3 subtle senses. Put together, we have 8 senses in all, and of all these 8 senses, the mind is the most powerful. So there you go. That's the understanding which the Bhakti Yoga texts give us about what mind actually is. It is one of our senses, but unlike the gross senses which we can see, touch, even feel, this subtle sense is something that is inside us. It is still part of us. It is still one of the 8 senses, but we can't really point at a particular direction and say this is where the mind is. Now, the ancient yoga text called the Bhagavata describes in detail about the nature of the mind. Why is it important to understand about its nature? Now, anyone in this world, if you go and ask them the reason for their sadness, and if they give you a reason, you try to explain to them the facts, you try to give them a solution. It's very common for us to hear that even though they understand what the solution could be, their mind, for some reason, doesn't accept it. And the reason why they say that is they don't quite understand about the interesting nature of the mind. So what we are about to discuss is just a few of the attributes of the mind. This is just a tip of the iceberg, but this will give us a fair good foundational understanding about the nature of mind. So the first attribute which the yoga texts give us about mind is the mind always overpromises and underdelivers. Imagine you watching a trailer of a movie. When you watch the trailer of the movie, the mind creates a certain level of expectation within you. And when you go to watch the actual movie in a theater, it won't, or more often than not, it won't match the expectation which the mind had already created. So the mind, as soon as it sees an opportunity, it always overpromise about the potential happiness which a certain thing can bring to us. But in reality, it always underdelivers. Similarly, let us say if you go to work early in the day, if you're a morning person, let's say you go to work at 7 o'clock, or you wake up early in the morning to study for your exams or to prepare even some of your office work, your mind would say, you wake up so early, you have a whole day now, and the day is going to be very, very long, you're going to get sleepy, so on and so forth. It always exaggerates the difficulty which we may come across in our endeavor to do something productive. Now, after exaggerating, even if you succeed in that endeavor and you get some happiness out of it, if you get an achievement, some credit out of it, the mind will always downplay it, saying, what's so great about it? So this is another interesting nature of the mind. Now there is a third attribute which the yoga texts explain, and that is the mind always tempts us. Many times it tempts us to do the wrong thing. It's always this naughty child inside, and it always gives us, whispers things in our ears. Do this, don't do this. Now our intelligence may kick in many occasions, and intelligence may warn us, please don't do it. But the mind will always overpower. Being the most powerful of all the senses, it always tends to overpower, overtake even intelligence. And then mind pushes us, it tempts us to do things which may not be to our rational choice, but we still do it. But as soon as you do it and you get a result which is not your expectation, immediately mind will also be the first person to chastise us. You stupid, why did you do this? So this is also another interesting nature of the mind. Mind will always tempt us, push us much against our own wish to do the wrong thing. But as soon as we do it, mind will always be the first person to chastise us also. So we have to be very, very careful. An ancient text called the Bhagavad Gita teaches us one interesting point about mind. Now, due to its powerful nature, mind can act as two different personalities. It can be the best friend and it can be our worst enemy. Two extremes. Dangerous. Now, when does it act as our best friend and when does it act as our worst enemy? We need to know that. When we control the mind, then it becomes our best friend. If we just give in to the rumblings of the mind, then it acts as our worst enemy. So it's important that we understand about this particular nature of the mind. Mind also has got this interesting nature to take on two states. It's called Sankalpa and Vikalpa in yoga texts. It's called acceptance and rejection. Mind, wherever you actually go, it just swings back and forth between these two states. Have you got this experience? Someday you just happen to walk on the aisle of a mall, you saw one of the latest technical gadgets, you just picked up, spend a lot of money buying it, bring it home, you use it for first day, second day, third day, and then you get used to it. The gadget doesn't appeal to you anymore. In fact, you start hating it so much that you don't use it at all. You just reject it altogether. You just trash it straight away. Again, when you walk down the aisle of the mall, you weren't going to buy it. Nevertheless, the mind pushed you to buy it. So much against your own rationale, you just went and bought it. And then as soon as you bring it home, you use it. After a few practice, routine, you just get so used to it, you just throw it away. So this is also one interesting nature of the mind which we should be very much wary of. Now, one final point I want to touch on about the mind's nature, which is very tricky, and you will shortly understand why it is very tricky. In this world, there are multiple versions of reality. For example, Let us say if you take this room, there is one window on the eastern side and one on the western side. And you have two people looking out at each of these windows. Okay, one is looking at the eastern window and one the western window. The one that looks out of the eastern window sees a tree, and the one who is looking out of the western window, he sees a cow. Now the one on the eastern side, he yells out, "Hey, I see a tree." And the one on the western side, he says like, "Hey, I see a cow." Now the guy on the eastern side, his mind immediately will tell the other guy is lying. And the one on the eastern side, his mind will have him thinking that the other person is lying. But actually, both of them are correct. They are just looking at different windows and they are just yelling out whatever they saw through each of those windows. But the nature of the mind is it will always tell us only one version, one of the multiple versions of reality. So in this particular example, there are two versions of truth, which is there is a tree, that is correct, and there is a cow on the western side, that is also correct. But the mind will always say only one version of the reality. For the person in the eastern side, it would say there is a tree outside and that's it. There is nothing else that exists in the world. And for the one on the western side, it would say there is a cow. There is no tree here anymore, or there is no tree whatsoever that the other person is narrating. He's just lying. Now, this tricky truth about the mind is very important because many of the relationships, be it friendships or be it a marital relationship, they break because of two people in a relationship seeing their own version of the reality, but unfortunately falling victim to their restless mind that what they see is correct, what they see alone is correct. But by understanding about this particular nature of the mind, it's very easy to reconcile any relationships wherein we understand, we come to this little broader perspective that yes, what I see is correct, but what other person sees also could be correct. At least we should allow the other person to have their own perspective and try to understand what they see as reality. And that is very, very important. So understanding about the nature of the mind helps us to have a broader perspective. It helps us to understand that many things which we actually acquire in our lives is actually not what we needed. It was just the whims of the mind that we give into, and then we end up acquiring them. So this way, there are a lot of attributes of the mind that are described in our beautiful blue book called Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavata Purana. Now, understanding about the nature of the mind, let's now delve a bit more deeper to see how we can control it. Now, one of the important instructions that we actually find in the Bhagavata Purana is when we learn, first of all, that we are not the mind. Mind is just one of the 8 senses we have. We are different to mind. That itself solves half the problem, because many times we tend to act on a thought, convincing ourselves that, oh, anyway, I thought about it, might as well do it. Many people, even if they want to quit a bad habit, they succeed for some time, but then suddenly they get influenced by a thought that comes out of the impression that they have actually built in the past. And then they tend to give in that, anyway, I have this thought, might as well just act on it. But understanding about this nature, whimsical nature of the mind, we should conclude that just because I have a thought doesn't mean I need to act on it. It's just a thought. If I wait for long enough, the thought is actually going to pass, and I will still, my resilience, my conviction, my determination to not do any bad deed will prevail. That faith, that determination we need to have. So this knowledge about the nature of the mind will definitely help us conquer that lower emotional state that tends to take over us all the time. And this knowledge will help us to have a more rational outlook in our lives. Another interesting aspect that is actually given about nature of the mind is if we are regular in doing certain thing, let us say you could be a student, if you have regularity in your life, that helps train the mind as well. So that way we can control the mind. We don't need to deal with the mind as the worst enemy. Rather, by following a regular routine, could be waking up a certain day in a time, doing exercise at a certain time in a day, rather waking up at a certain time in a day, doing exercise in a certain time in a day, going to work, going to uni, or studying anything. If we have a certain regulation in our schedule, definitely that helps us to train the mind, and that way we can make the mind to be our best friend. Another tip that's given in the yoga texts is that we should be engaging in work that suits our nature. Many times people, they have passion in a certain work, but they end up doing some other work just to pay their bills because they couldn't, let's say, get a proper job in the area of expertise. But as much as possible, each one of us need to be engaged in a work that suits our nature. If we do it that way, then controlling the mind, pacifying the mind becomes very, very easy. I'm just going to tell you a small instance that I've actually happened to be part of. In Indian villages, you will actually see whenever there are snakes, the villagers also, they grow as one of their pet animal a small mongoose. Mongoose are considered to be one of the eternal enemy of snakes. Now, I once happened to watch a mongoose fighting with a snake. But if you go to any Indian village and you ask them how does a mongoose kills a snake, they will tell you something very interesting. So the mongoose, it will come and it will challenge the snake. They both would fight for some time. And during the time of the fight, the snake would bite the mongoose, injecting its venom, poison, into the body of mongoose. Mongoose immediately would pause the fight, run towards a certain herb, roll on it. So that herb is the antidote. Then after feeling rejuvenated, immediately it will come back again and continue from where it left off. This time, part of the fight is as the mongoose fights the snake, it would slowly drag the snake towards that herb. And again, if the snake happened to bite the mongoose, mongoose would pause the fight, again it would run, roll on the herb. This way, this routine would actually continue, and at one point, every single time the mongoose is actually running towards the antidote herb, it would start pulling the snake slowly, every single time it comes back. And at one point, it would bring the snake very close to the herb. Some villagers say they actually place the snakes right on the herb and it kills it, and immediately it rolls on the herb to protect itself. Now we can learn a lesson from this particular incident, which is actually a common knowledge of villages. We can take a lesson from it how to control the mind. Alone, it's very, very hard for us to fight with the mind, because right from the time you wake up early in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, sometimes even at sleep, you have this mind active sense, most powerful of all sense, constantly coming. It's very easy to shut down our ears. Just close your eyes. It's very, or rather eyes. You close your eyes, it's very easy. You close your ears, it's very easy to shut down. Likewise, you close your mouth, it's very easy to shut down that particular sense. However, it's very hard to shut down mind, because constantly it keeps on whispering. Constantly it keeps on trying to influence our rational way of leading life. So what we need to do, the lesson we can learn from the mongoose is just like how it is actually dragging the snake slowly to its point of strength, which is to be right in the close proximity of that herb. Similarly, if we can surround ourselves with like-minded people, with company of people who are practicing mind control, who are in a good state of mind, who exude a lot of vibrance, positive energy, that way they will also act as an antidote from all these rumblings of the mind. So the more we associate with such like-minded people, more we will find it becomes easier to control the mind. Now, before we conclude, it's almost time. Before we conclude, I just want to share with you one particular instruction, for want of a better word, that's actually given in the wisdom of the Bhagavata. Bhagavata gives a lot of ways how we can control the mind. So many different instructions it gives. However, Bhagavata also repeatedly emphasizes and re-emphasizes on one particular instruction, saying this particular way is the most effective way to control the mind. Take a guess. It's mantra meditation. The very word mantra means that which controls the mind, that which conquers the mind, that which protects the mind. That's what mantra means. Man means mind and tra means that which protects the mind. So Bhagavata philosophy teaches us that simply by chanting mantras, we can protect the mind. We can feed the mind. Just like we feed this body with food, mind also feeds on a certain type of food, and that food is mantra. So if we simply chant this beautiful mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Simply if we chant this mantra a certain number of times as part of your everyday spiritual practice, Bhagavata promises, Bhagavata assures that our mind will be under our control. Not only that, as we discussed before, it would become our best friend. So even though mind causes so much trouble, if we bring mind under control, imagine the amount of power which we will be able to hold and which we will be able to wield in every area that we actually work on. Could be materially, could be spiritually, could be in a relationship, could be in anything. So by practicing this mantra meditation, by chanting this beautiful mantra, one can not only conquer their mind, but can also be a source of inspiration, be a source of positive energy, positive vibration in their friend circle, in their family circle, and in the whole environment, wherever they happen to be in. So thank you so much for so patiently hearing about these mysteries of the mind and how we can control the mind. And as I said, we have just scratched the surface. There is so much more to discuss. So please stay tuned. If any of you would like to learn more about mantra meditation, you can visit our website www.thehappyjiva.com, or you can visit our Facebook page and you can learn how to actually chant. We are running weekly sessions on japa meditation, how to chant mantra every day. If you like to actually buy the entire Vedic encyclopedia of Bhakti Yoga, you can do so by visiting our website as well. So thank you so much. We will see you next week with another interesting topic. Hare Krishna.